5:01, it's September 28th, and it's time for the Bristol County Water Authority's monthly board meeting. The second item on the agenda, as always, is public input. I don't recognize any members of the public that are here tonight. So we'll move on to the approval of last month's, of the minutes of last month's meeting.
Move that be approved.
Second. Any discussion on the motion? No comments on the minutes? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Move on to the executive director's report. Director.
All right. Like a pipeline project, nothing new to report on phase one. Highlights this past month from phase two are, we had a productive meeting with DEM Wetlands discussing the permitting requirements for a 10-mile river crossing, which was held at the end of August. And that led to the beta group then completing a type study memo for the comparison analysis of the 10-mile river crossing. Needed to go on the east side or the west side of the bridge, so we're presently reviewing that.
Were there any major issues with that river crossing?
Major issues?
Yeah,
No.
okay.
Steve, what does type study memo mean?
It's a kind of a brief memo, kind of comparing different alternatives to best means and methods of crossing.
Okay, so type is the type of crossing.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
We also recently had a meeting with DOT to discuss a very critical section of the project. That's the tunnel crossing under I-195. And they laid out the permitting requirements of that. And they recommended, and we were hoping that they were going to say that we kind of segment that section of the project so that can be permitted separately and reviewed separately by federal highway as opposed to the remainder of the project that will be along most of the state roadways. We're on Warren Avenue, Taunton Avenue, Waterman Avenue, and a long way on Pawtucket Avenue. So that would kind of be treated as a separate utility permit as opposed to the crossing of I-195.
What do you propose? What did they propose? Did they do drill through or did they make a tunnel?
Yeah, 2 drill shafts on either side, starting at kind of with a near in the grassy area where that new highway off ramp is onto Pawtucket Avenue from I-195, near the state garage.
They use that as a storage area.
They use that as a storage area there now. And so essentially, kind of a shaft in the ground, and they're gonna bore through the bedrock, well under the highway, and then come up on the opposite side, and where there's a parking lot of a business off of on Waterman Avenue.
Okay.
It's through bedrock?
Through bedrock. Yeah.
A lot of businesses there.
There's a lot of businesses
Yeah.
there. Yeah, so we recently received also some of the plans for the easements required, and we'll start reaching out to some of those. We have already on a couple of them, to start securing some of the easements required from those businesses in that area.
Do you need an easement just to go under them?
We'll need a permanent easement through DOT, but then we come up on private property, we go through private property to get onto Waterman Avenue. The pipeline then crosses Waterman Avenue onto more private property before heading up towards Pawtucket Avenue.
Okay. So it continues straight across Waterman and then, okay.
Yeah. The section of Waterman Avenue that we once we get there, is also chock-full of utilities, so it prohibits us from actually staying in the roadway, so we'll be requiring some private property easements. So we'll be right off the state right away, but, on private property.
Thanks.
The draft contract, I had a conversation with Sandy Mack this afternoon to tie up some loose ends, and then we'll be sending over the draft revisions over to Pawtucket for their hopefully concurrence to get that wrapped up. The demolition is, as you know, is complete. We just have some minor punch list items to close that out. And then with phase 2 demolition, we'll be budgeting that in for next year's budget for the buildings.
We have
No one's come forward. No one's come forward saying, we would like to buy those for you for $500,000 now.
There was a lot, that meeting that we went to, there was a lot of interest in.
I've seen those lives at that meeting, John. Yes, there was. The dam removal project, contractor's been here, checking things out, and they will start mobilizing next week. Sent the press release, that was put in the paper yesterday. The editor basically just took my press release, put it word for word to the photo, so gets the word out to the local area that the project is starting, which was good. And we were also notified that there will be a precedent next Friday in Providence announcing some grant awards. I'm not at liberty to say at this point how much BCWA will be getting, but we will be getting an award.
That's good news.
It's good news, yes. Just meter replacements, it's kind of down to just a handful. Joe's been away, when he gets back, we'll start tackling these to close this project out. Water purchases, no surprise. Been a very wet summer. Actually, looking back at some of the data, it was the lowest the past 10 years for that month of August. Provided the graphs, it really stands out when you graph it out. We've had our hydrant flushing program in effect this fall, and next week they will be finishing up Warren and getting into Bristol. That will include a project summary. Budgets are in good shape.
On the hydrant flushing,
Yep.
is there a specific area within the city, the towns that are being done, or? I just wonder if there's any more specific information that can be given out.
Just do them all.
Do a walk?
Yeah, they just do the wall.
Oh, okay.
We
All right.
put notices in the paper for consecutive weeks. On the website, Facebook page.
They're doing them all, that's fine. I thought there was maybe just one little area or something you're doing.
My neighborhood's been done.
I think it's the
You
law.
must know somebody.
Mine has two.
I don't have any hydrants,
It's just an attachment. I just have my press release, the notice that we put the flushing, drafts, and then we get into Mike's report.
I was on the shower and it was a serious drop. Oh, yeah, the mills.
That's it. Mike, do you want to add anything?
Nothing much else to add. Normal operation maintenance has been going on. We've also been supporting the contractor. They're finishing up the work in Barrington, the Wampsgate area, and We are coordinating with the contractor right now to expand the scope based on some available budget. And that looks like it will progress down in the Lower Lane Monkey Wrench area to wrap up that project for the year. So if everything comes together, that should break ground in the next week to 2 weeks. The other thing that kicked off was the roof. They made some last minute schedule accommodations and were able to mobilize this week. So we had a crane here at Benfield Day the other day, offloading and uploading all the materials to the top side of the roof with some supplemental stuff remaining on the ground, but that work is going on and it should be completed in about 4 to 6 weeks, including the metal work and trim as they finish off the shingling. That's about it. Also included the schedule for the dams.
Very colorful, very nice.
It's a very thorough schedule. The big takeaway is how consolidated everything is. They will be in and out of here. So it'll be an active October and November with significant works completed middle of December. So there should be some fairly significant changes that'll be going on here over the next couple of months. We'll be monitoring it, just like we do most of our projects with drone footage and inspections. So we should capture a lot of the changes, as well as all the research partners. Everybody is looking forward to seeing what happens. But it will be positive for the environment.
No update on parts for the pump house?
That is, so
We
we
could
are
sell
still
that house, you know, and get some money.
I'm sorry?
Sell that house and get some money.
It is a very attractive house.
Yes.
So that is the positive. It does seem to fit in with the environment, but the components we've been waiting for are unfortunately still in the delayed timeframe. We do have, when you break it down to the major structure of them, variable frequency drives that actually turn the motors, we have those. So that's positive, that's great. The other things that receive the power, there is one component missing to assemble. So that component, we're trying to flesh out where it actually is. It has delivery dates that are short terms, but they keep getting pushed out. So the next one is October 1st. This started at August 28th, and then it'll be pushed out a week and a half at a time. Once this one component comes in, it's a 1 week turnaround to get the stuff on a truck to us. So that's the positive thing. The timeline seems to be getting tighter. Clarity on how the logistics will manage out. Unfortunately, it relies on this sub-vendor bringing in a transfer switch. It's an automatic transfer switch that switches power from utility power to generator power automatically for the building. It relies on them providing it to the electrical supplier. So we're still.
That's not there as part of the generator right now?
No, it is part of the MCC construction. So it'll switch inside the motor control center, switch where the power is allowed to come into the building. So that what does not happen on the generator. It'll allow the flow of energy from the generator into the building.
So in the meantime, it's amazing what you can rent Airbnb space for these days, so maybe we might want to look at that in the short term.
So we are continuing to progress work where we can. Internal piping is about 95% complete. There'll be some additional build out for the next couple of weeks. We're trying to coordinate partial powering of some of the lower voltage equipment to complete some of the underground, but we still have to assess what's possible because that's running temporary circuits for temporary services and things that we have yet to vet out. So.
I see in Susan's report, there's a photograph of a new sign that BCWA is putting out on the construction sites. I think that was something that was discussed at one of the board meetings. So it's nice to see that. Anything else from
I'd
operations?
just like to mention to Mike, the other day I was on Solom's Road and large dump trucks were coming down the street. And I can't identify the drivers anymore because they all have beards. And he stopped to let a gentleman in a motorized wheelchair get across the street. And I thought that reflects nicely on the whole water authority.
That's,
If you can find out who he was, a nice gesture.
I will try to find out. Yeah, we have a great group of operators. They know that they're out in the system. They know that they serve the system. They like doing improvements because it has a community benefit. So they enjoy being out there. So I'm glad to hear that you had a positive experience.
Where was this?
Right after went over the Warren Bridge and go on to Solom's Road, he was coming south and he stopped right there to let the gentleman go across it.
Great.
Maybe he got him in trouble, maybe he wasn't supposed to be on that road.
So there you go again.
Dan, finance report.
I was gonna ask one question, with Sue,
What-
is everything done on Bradford Street?
Yes.
That's all done, completed from the water company side?
Yes, just
Okay.
some final paving.
That's, yeah. The world needs paving with this.
Yes.
Anything else regarding operations? Going once, twice, and now on to finance. Dan?
Okay, we'll start on page 4, which is August versus August. This is the first time we really see the wet summer kicking in. Revenue's down compared to last August by 15%. I went back and looked at Joe's schedules that he keeps up in that page 9 or whatever, where the report is. I have the information going back like 15 years, and it's the lowest August ever. I mean, you can't just look at this August versus last August. A lot of times you can look at a trend, but it's the lowest August ever. So I'm not expecting revenues to increase as the rest of the year goes on, because we'll be billing that August in September, October, and part of November. So I suspect that's going to start going down. Expenses are under budget by about, under compared to last August by 6%. A lot of that is the decrease in the water. 76,000 of that was water. When we go to page 5, which is the through August versus the through August last year, we see that revenue is up higher by about 6.5%. That's really the rate increase. A little bit of it is that shifting of those routes late last year that pushed a little bit of revenue into March of this year. So we're starting to see that decrease in the consumption for April through now August start to creep into the cumulative totals. Expenses are slightly lower than last August. Again, a lot of that is water. Water is the biggest culprit in that. Kept that down a lot. There was a little bit increase in the salaries and wages operations, which we talked about the last couple months, where last year we had somebody out. We had somebody that had left. Somebody was out on FMLA or something, or injury, and then somebody left. By the end of August, I think those positions had been pretty much filled, so that should level out a little bit. And then we got a little increase there. There's an increase in the administrative expenses, and that's really the amount that we contribute every month to the pension plan. That gets adjusted at the end of the year after they do the pension report. The next page, page 6, is the actual versus budget. Revenue's still over budget, 8.93%, which again is good. We want to be over budget with revenue. The actual usage is still a little bit higher than we budget. We budget a little conservative. We budget not for a really dry summer. We budget for something a little more in the middle. So we kind of budget with a little bit of a cushion in there in case we have a bad year. Expenses are under budget as well by 9%. The 3 biggest areas are pretty much the ones that have been for the last couple months. We have the professional fees. We haven't had a lot of fees in that area between consultants, etc. Water is down now from the last couple of months of purchases being a little bit lower. And operation and maintenance is a little bit lower so far this year than we budgeted for, so it's kind of a timing thing. If we go to pages 7 and 8, that's the gallons, the dollars billed and gallons delivered. Again, the dollars billed shows an increase of 4.73% versus the prior August, while the gallons delivered is down 2.53%. Yeah, those two together, you get around that 6% rate increase that we put through in March. As I've been saying, April through now August, you can see the consumption is lower than the last year at the same time. March kind of kept us treading water from the very beginning. And as I mentioned, I don't anticipate revenues being higher going forward versus the prior year. July and August were really wet, so September's not doing very good either. I'm having a lot of softball games get canceled, so. Page 9, we have the trust report through August. The debt service ratio so far is at 6.65, which is a little bit better than it was in July. And then page 10 is the pension report. And we can see that there's a little bit of decrease for the month of August, about 64,000, but it's overall increase. Again, the plan year starts July 1st, so it's only 2 months. But for the plan year, there was a slight increase of almost 50,000. And the balance at the end of August was just over $3.7 million. I don't have the OPEB one yet. I believe that one should be in next month, because we get that quarterly. And I believe I have the pension folks coming out in a couple of months.
No, next month.
Next month? Yes, we're in September now, yes. At next month's meeting. They'll probably do it virtually, which they did last year. They added some new members to the team. I don't know if they took over another company or another company merged with them, whatever, but they added some new members to the team who've been doing the work, so.
Any questions of Dan? Any more information, Dan?
Oh, that's it.
Everybody's okay. All right. Next item on the agenda is agenda item number 6, approval of contract award for Nair Road Pump Station roof replacement.
Yes, requesting approval for a contract award. The lowest responsive bidder. We received 4 bids through the round NPA. This is a season to do roof replacement work. We've got this building being done, and then the Nair Road Pump Station will be done for just under $30,000. Contract amount of $24,908 with 20% project contingency for a total project budget of $29,976.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion regarding the recommendation and the motion?
Move to approve.
We already have a motion in second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's nice to see we had some competition on the bid.
Yeah, hopes.
Next item on the agenda is a discussion regarding landlord versus tenant billing issues, which we had brought up at one of the recent meetings. Steve?
Yes, given that there was some discussion at last month's meeting when Joe presented his report, it was requested to put this back on for further discussion. And essentially, I mean, this issue was discussed about a year and a half ago, in March 2022, if you recall. At that time, we didn't make any policy changes other than we did raise the security deposits, which have not been changed prior to that time since 2008. Essentially just providing some of the background information from discussions at that time. And I can tell you that our uncollectible rate still remains at a very low percentage, 0.14%. And back in March 2022, I did do some research regarding the national average on collectibles was at 1.4 to 0.6%.
Do you have a proposal on what you think the deposit should be?
Well, since we recently just changed it, we're not recommending a change again at this time.
So I'm confused because your memo said it hadn't been changed since 2008.
Yeah, but then they did change it in 2022. We changed it in April 2022.
So what is the deposit that's required?
It is $165 for residential customers and $330 for commercial customers.
And what does that amount to on an average bill? 1 month, 2 month, 3 month?
The average residential
quarterly bill.
quarterly bill.
bill.
So it's 3 months.
3 months.
There was an increase for residential from 120 to 165.
So 165 still in the ballpark.
Correct. Yes.
I move that we take the recommendation of the executive director.
The second of the motion?
What is the proposal here?
No change.
No change. We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
Do we even need a motion?
Why do we need a motion if there's no change?
No, it's just
Is
to
accepting the...
accept it.
it.
Just to accept it as a report, that's all.
It formalizes it, I guess.
Yeah. We're accepting it's a recommendation to keep it. This is what it is.
Just to give him a vote of confidence.
There was discussion about whether or not we should raise it up, change it,
Right, I know.
or change the burden from being on the tenant to the landlord and so forth. They looked into it. We have a low, very low uncollectible rate, which is amazing. And we recently increased it a year or so ago. And so the conclusion is leave it alone, it's working. And the motion was to accept that. And so, all those in favor of accepting the conclusions of the report by the director, say aye.
Aye.
And I'm
Any
going to say
opposed?
nay, and I'm going to tell you why. Because ordinarily Steve gives us something that's very well articulated. I think this memo should have said that since it was increased a year ago, I am not recommending any increase at this time. Because otherwise, somebody's going to have to paw through our minutes to figure that out.
Well, they're going to have to call through the minutes to figure that out. But I do
It's a
agree with you.
if. I'm
I
just-
do agree with you that I always like to see a recommendation from the staff where we enunciate it. But we come to the same conclusion in any case. Just good point. Moving on to the next agenda item, and I've lost my agenda here. Is the policy committee.
The policy committee met at 4 o'clock. We discussed it and agreed to accept or recommend acceptance of the policy with a couple of relatively minor changes. And I'll go through those quickly. For the most part, they're basically language. If you're looking at the draft and third line, sentence beginning in the middle, therefore, as a general guide rather than matter of policy. I think guide is a better statement of what we're doing. The end of that sentence, the board will follow rather than adhere to. 2 sentences farther down, line beginning, or 2 lines farther down, beginning with employee handbook, new sentence. Instead of further, put in specifically, because that's what we're talking about. And the sentence following that, apply to board members. This document explains which covered policies are listed. The one substantive change is that the committee recommended that we delete from this policy as applicable to the board members, the dress policy. Based on experience, we arguably, as members of the board, have not always adhered to it, and it seems cleaner to just delete it. I don't think it's relevant. It's not material to us anyhow. We're not usually during business hours, and we're not dealing with the, hopefully people will dress respectfully when we have members of the public for our annual meeting. And so with those changes, the committee recommended unanimously that this be approved.
Do I have a motion on that?
That's
You're
a
making a motion. Do I have a second? Any other discussion regarding the motion, the policy? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay. The item on the, next on the agenda is the board member town council reports. Does anybody have anything to report from their town councils?
One, I
their
have
towns?
one item. I sent an email out today. The Bristol Fire Chief asked me to present to the VCWA. I sent out a quick email regarding hydrants and the color coding of hydrants throughout the system. It is a requirement. It was brought up a couple of years ago. He's looking for any information regarding what we're going to do. He believes if we send him the flow and pressures associated with the hydrants in Bristol, he's ready to go off and paint them himself if he so did.
Okay, so he can contact the staff, the director, and make arrangements to do that. It doesn't need an action by the board, though.
No, it's
Right,
just
it's
what
just
the town,
information, right.
it's info anyhow. If somebody needs to address that, if you want to give him a call, just CC me on the email, if you would. And then he's looking for what the results of the hydrant testing are so we could get those labeled properly.
Do the neighborhoods-
Is there anything statewide that stipulates what the color should be?
Yes.
Do the neighborhoods get to decide what color they like?
No, this isn't Warren we're talking about. This is, Warren painted them like little men, you know, they thought it was the 4th of July. This is specified in NFPA,
Okay, that's what I
the
wanted.
ratings of the different hydrants and the colors associated with them. This is to, if you have a choice of a hydrant versus, as you're coming up to a fire, if you have a choice of a hydrant that's blue, for instance, versus a green or a red or a yellow, you're going to grab the blue one so you can get the most water. That's the purpose of it. So
Okay.
it's a requirement that's levied on all water companies by the Fire Association, National Fire Protection Association.
This is what evolution brings.
No, it's been there for a long time. It's all,
It doesn't bring.
no, but it's something that if we could address it, if they're doing the hydrant testing, send him the pressures and flows, whatever he would need to get the thing started.
We'll reach out to him.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Anything else? Hearing none, we'll move on to executive session. Need to have a motion to go into executive session. Do I have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're going into executive session. Ready? Get ready. Oh,
All right, Tom. Motion to seal the executive session minutes.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. No abstentions, no nays. The next board meeting is on October 26, 2023. Mark your calendars. We will forego the annual costume party that night.
That would be contrary to the dress code.
Yeah, so-
Wait, that's taken out.
That's why we took it out, right?
That's out, we can do whatever you
We
want.
can do whatever we want. You let us do that. Okay, motion to adjourn.
So moved, Chairman.
Meeting's adjourned.